Every morning, millions of people wake up already in debt, before their day even begins. Not because they're irresponsible. Not because they overspend. But because the modern economic system is quietly designed to keep them borrowing, again and again. Debt is no longer a financial tool. It has become a psychological system, shaping how we think, behave, spend, and even how we see ourselves. From America's rising household debt to Europe's shrinking middle class, from the silent stress carried by ordinary workers to the global dependency on credit, this is no longer just an economic crisis. This is a mental one. For the next 25 minutes, we're diving deep into the hidden forces behind modern debt, and why escaping it requires more than money. It requires understanding the psychology behind it. This is the psychology of the debt trap. How debt became normal. There was a time when debt was a last resort. Today, it is a lifestyle. According to the IMF's Global Debt Database, worldwide household debt has crossed $59 trillion. In many countries, people rely on loans for education, housing, healthcare, transportation, even monthly groceries. The shift happened quietly. Societies moved from earn, save, then buy, to borrow now, pay later, repeat forever. Psychologists call this deferred pain bias. Humans naturally prefer immediate pleasure even when it creates long-term cost. Modern financial systems understand this deeply, and they package borrowing as empowerment, opportunity, or smart living. Zero down payments. Buy now, pay later. Micro-installments. Financing for lifestyle products. Debt stopped being a warning sign. It became the default. But how did we get here? The transformation began in the 1980s. Credit cards became mainstream. Banks loosened lending standards. Mortgages became easier to access. Student loans became necessary for education. Auto financing became standard for transportation. Within one generation, debt shifted from stigma to strategy. Marketing campaigns reframed borrowing as financial sophistication. Build your credit score. Leverage your purchasing power. Invest in yourself. The language changed. The culture changed. And slowly, an entire society normalized something their grandparents would have feared. Today's children grow up seeing debt as inevitable. They watch parents finance cars, homes, and vacations. They hear about student loans before they hear about savings accounts. The psychological conditioning begins early. By the time young adults take their first loan, they already believe it's just how life works. What debt does to the mind. The psychological impact of debt is far more powerful than most people realize. Studies from the American Psychological Association, the UK Financial Conduct Authority, and the Federal Reserve's Consumer Wellbeing Survey reveal several disturbing patterns. Debt reduces working memory and weakens decision-making. It triggers constant stress and activates survival thinking. It pushes people into short-term decisions because long-term planning feels impossible. Worse, the anxiety caused by debt often makes people spend emotionally, creating more debt and more anxiety. Harvard research on the scarcity trap proves that when people feel financially trapped, they lose cognitive capacity, behave impulsively, and become more vulnerable to the next loan offer. Think about that for a moment. Debt doesn't just take your money. It takes your mental clarity. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack everywhere you go. At first, you notice the weight. But eventually, your body adapts. Your posture changes. Your breathing becomes shallow. You move more slowly. The weight becomes part of you. Debt works the same way psychologically. In the beginning, people feel the stress acutely. They check their bank balance obsessively. They avoid opening bills. They lie awake calculating payments. But over time, something dangerous happens. The mind adapts to chronic stress. The anxiety becomes background noise. The debt becomes normalized. This is called stress habituation, and it's one of the most dangerous psychological effects of long-term debt. People stop fighting the debt. They accept it as permanent. They make minimum payments without questioning whether freedom is even possible. The system relies on this psychological surrender. Neuroscience research shows that financial stress activates the same brain regions as physical pain. The amygdala, the brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational planning, becomes suppressed. Under these conditions, people cannot think clearly about the future. They survive day to day, paycheck to paycheck, decision to decision. And the cycle continues. The system that needs you in debt. Debt is not accidental. It is deeply integrated into modern economies. Governments benefit because higher borrowing fuels consumption and keeps GDP growth alive. Banks benefit because interest payments are predictable, long-term revenue streams. Corporations benefit because customers spend more when they can split payments. Even artificial intelligence algorithms benefit because consumer data helps predict borrowing behavior and target people at their most vulnerable moments. This creates a cycle. The financial system needs people to keep borrowing, so it learns, adapts, and nudges them to do exactly that. Some experts now warn of algorithmic debt traps, where machine learning models don't just assess risk. They exploit behavioral weaknesses to push more borrowing. Let's break down how this actually works. Every time you browse online, algorithms track your behavior. What you click. How long you hesitate. What you almost buy but don't. The data feeds into models that predict your likelihood of taking credit. Then the offers appear. Perfectly timed. Perfectly worded. Appearing exactly when you're most vulnerable. Just got paid? Here's an upgrade offer. Feeling stressed? Here's a vacation financing option. Christmas approaching? Here's a zero-interest installment plan. The targeting isn't random. It's engineered. Research from behavioral economics shows that people are more likely to borrow when they're tired, stressed, or emotionally overwhelmed. Algorithms know this. They wait for those moments. Mobile banking apps track your spending patterns and detect when you're running low on funds. Then they offer overdraft protection or instant loans, framed as helpful solutions rather than additional debt. By now, pay later services have exploded because they remove the psychological pain of payment. You get the product immediately. The cost is split into tiny pieces. Each payment feels manageable. But the cumulative effect is massive. Studies show that people using installment payment services spend 30 to 40% more than they would paying upfront. They buy things they wouldn't otherwise afford. They accumulate multiple small debts that together become overwhelming. The financial system has perfected the art of making debt feel painless until it's too late. And the most troubling part? The people designing these systems understand human psychology better than most psychologists. They employ behavioral scientists specifically to maximize borrowing behavior. This isn't conspiracy. It's business strategy, backed by billions of dollars in research and development. America's debt crisis. The United States is the clearest example of the debt trap in action. According to the New York Federal Reserve, total household debt stands at $17.5 trillion. Credit card debt exceeds $1.1 trillion. Auto loans reach $1.6 trillion. Student loans total $1.7 trillion. Mortgage debt surpasses $12 trillion. Even though wages have risen, real income has fallen for millions due to inflation. Housing costs have increased by more than 30% since 2020. Grocery prices have surged over 25%. Healthcare costs continue climbing. The average American household now spends nearly half of its income on debt payments, the highest ratio since before the 2008 financial crash. People feel broke not because they fail personally, but because the system requires borrowing to maintain a basic standard of living. Let's put this in perspective. In the 1970s, a single income could support a middle-class family, buy a home, and save for retirement. Today, dual-income households struggle to afford the same lifestyle their parents achieved with one paycheck. What changed? Wages stagnated while costs exploded. But more importantly, the definition of basic living expanded. Cable became internet. Phones became smartphones. Transportation became car payments. Healthcare became insurance premiums. The baseline cost of participating in modern society increased dramatically. And the gap between income and expenses was filled entirely with debt. Credit cards bridged the grocery budget shortfall. Student loans covered education costs that used to be affordable. Auto loans financed transportation that used to be optional. Mortgages stretched families beyond their means because rent prices made buying seem smarter. Each decision made sense individually. But collectively, they created a nation living on borrowed time and borrowed money. The Federal Reserve reports that 40% of Americans cannot cover a $400 emergency without borrowing. Not because they're financially illiterate, but because after covering rent, food, transportation, healthcare, and debt payments, nothing remains. The system is working exactly as designed. Keep people earning. Keep people spending. Keep people borrowing. Keep the economy growing. But individual lives are collapsing under the weight. The middle class illusion. Across the developed world, the middle class is shrinking. The OECD reports that in 36 out of 40 member countries, the middle class is losing purchasing power. Housing becomes more expensive. Education becomes more expensive. Healthcare becomes more expensive. Wages grow slowly. Debt grows the fastest. The modern middle class is no longer defined by income but by access to credit. People appear financially stable as long as they can still borrow. But the moment credit tightens, the middle collapses. This is the great illusion of contemporary prosperity. Drive through any suburban neighborhood. Clean houses. New cars. Well-dressed families. Everything looks stable, secure, successful. But beneath the surface, most of those households are one emergency away from financial disaster. The new car. Financed over 7 years. The house. Mortgaged to the maximum. The vacation photos on social media. Paid for with credit cards. The children's education. Funded by loans that will take decades to repay. The middle class isn't thriving. It's performing stability while standing on a foundation of debt. Sociologists call this precarious prosperity. The appearance of success sustained entirely by continuous borrowing. And it's psychologically exhausting. People maintain the facade because admitting struggle feels like personal failure. They keep spending to signal success, which requires more borrowing, which creates more stress, which increases the need for emotional spending. The trap becomes self-reinforcing. Research shows that financial shame prevents people from seeking help. They hide their debt from family, friends, even spouses. They suffer in silence, believing everyone else has it figured out. But everyone else is trapped too. They're just better at hiding it. The middle-class dream has transformed from build wealth slowly to maintain appearances desperately. And the psychological cost is staggering. Why people stay trapped. Behavioral economics identifies 4 psychological forces that keep people trapped in debt. First, optimism bias. People believe future income will solve everything. They take loans assuming promotions, bonuses, or windfalls will arrive. But life rarely unfolds as planned, and the debt remains. Second, lifestyle inflation. As income increases, spending increases faster. People upgrade homes, cars, vacations, thinking they can now afford it. But the upgrades come with new debt, and the gap never closes. Third, social comparison. Social media creates constant pressure to appear successful. People spend to match peers, maintain status, and avoid feeling left behind. Each post of a vacation, purchase, or achievement triggers comparison and spending. Fourth, endless debt cycles. Installments renew automatically. Credit limits rise silently. Loans get extended with minimal paperwork. The system makes it easier to stay in debt than to escape it. Debt feels temporary, but it is engineered to be permanent. Let's examine each force more closely. Optimism bias is powerful because it's rooted in hope. People genuinely believe things will improve. They tell themselves, once I get that promotion, I'll pay everything off. Or, after this busy season, I'll focus on saving. But the promotion doesn't cover the debt. The busy season never ends. And meanwhile, interest compounds silently. Lifestyle inflation is perhaps the most insidious trap. When someone earning $50,000 receives a raise to $60,000, they rarely save the difference. Instead, they upgrade their apartment, lease a better car, eat at nicer restaurants. Their new lifestyle costs $60,000, sometimes more. So despite earning more, they feel exactly as broke as before. And now they're committed to higher fixed expenses. Social comparison has exploded with social media. Everyone's highlight reel becomes your measuring stick. You see friends traveling, buying homes, driving new cars, and you feel pressure to keep up. What you don't see are their credit card balances, their loan statements, their private financial stress. Finally, endless debt cycles exploit human psychology perfectly. Minimum payments feel manageable. Automatic renewals remove decision points. Credit limit increases feel like rewards rather than risks. The system is designed to make debt the path of least resistance. Breaking free requires swimming against powerful psychological currents. And most people simply don't have the energy, knowledge, or support to do it. The global spread. This is not just an American problem. European households now owe an average of 97% of their disposable income, according to the European Central Bank. The UK has seen its biggest rise in credit card borrowing since 2005. South Korea has the highest household debt-to-GDP ratio in the world at 104%. China's youth face rising debt due to job shortages. India's 18 to 25-year-olds are adopting buy now, pay later services at explosive rates. Debt addiction is becoming a global pattern, driven by culture, technology, and economic pressure. What started in America has spread worldwide, adapted to local contexts but following the same psychological playbook. In Europe, negative interest rates pushed people toward borrowing. In Asia, competitive pressure and limited social safety nets drove younger generations into debt. In developing nations, digital lending apps made credit accessible to populations previously excluded from formal banking. Each region has unique triggers, but the result is identical. More people borrowing more money with less ability to repay. The World Bank warns that global household debt is now growing faster than global GDP. This means debt is accumulating faster than wealth is being created. Mathematically, this cannot continue indefinitely. Something will break. And when it does, the psychological damage will be as severe as the financial damage. The psychology of escape. Escaping debt is not only about earning more or budgeting better. It requires a psychological shift. People must shift their identity from consumer to builder. They must replace shopping dopamine with progress dopamine, celebrating savings milestones instead of purchases. They must rely on automatic systems, because willpower is unreliable. Minimalism and financial boundaries reduce emotional decision-making. And visualizing the future self, supported by behavioral research, reduces the desire for short-term debt by over 30%. True freedom begins with understanding the psychology behind money. Let's break down the psychological strategies that actually work. First, identity transformation. If you see yourself as a consumer, you'll consume. If you see yourself as a builder, you'll build. This isn't motivational fluff. It's fundamental psychology. Your brain seeks consistency with your self-image. Change the image, and behavior follows. Second, replace emotional rewards. Shopping provides dopamine hits. Buying something new feels good temporarily. But that pleasure is fleeting and expensive. Instead, create dopamine from progress. Celebrate every debt payment. Track savings growth visually. Share milestones with supportive people. Make financial progress emotionally rewarding. Third, automate everything. Willpower fails under stress. Don't rely on daily discipline to save money or avoid spending. Set up automatic transfers to savings the day income arrives. Automate bill payments. Remove credit cards from online shopping accounts. Make the right choice the default choice. Fourth, embrace strategic minimalism. This doesn't mean deprivation. It means intentional living. Ask before every purchase, does this align with my values and goals, or is this emotional spending? Most purchases fail this test. Fifth, use visualization techniques. Behavioral research shows that people who regularly visualize their future selves make dramatically better financial decisions. Spend 5 minutes daily imagining your life debt-free. What does it feel like? What opportunities does it create? How does it change your daily stress? Make the future real in your mind, and present-day sacrifices become easier. Finally, build community. Financial shame keeps people isolated. Break that isolation. Find others on the same journey. Share struggles and victories. Accountability and support make escape possible. The debt trap is psychological. Therefore, the escape must be psychological too. Closing. Debt is far more than a financial number. It is a psychological system that shapes choices, opportunities, stress levels, and entire societies. The modern economy may depend on debt, but individuals do not have to. Breaking free starts with awareness. It starts with understanding how the system works and how the mind reacts to it. The financial industry has spent billions of dollars understanding your psychology to keep you borrowing. Now you must understand your own psychology to break free. This is not about perfection. It's about direction. Every payment toward debt is a payment toward freedom. Every month without new borrowing is a victory. Every dollar saved is a step away from the trap. The system is powerful, but it's not invincible. Millions have escaped. Not by earning more, though that helps. Not by perfection, because perfection is impossible. But by understanding the psychological forces at work and consciously choosing a different path. The debt trap is real. The psychological damage is profound. But escape is possible. And it begins right now, with the decision to see clearly, think differently, and act intentionally. This is the psychology of the debt trap. And this is the first step toward escaping it permanently. Thank you for watching.